she's not my spirit animal, but she's a very spiritual animal. So she comes and she lends her energy as well.
Would you consider her a familiar?
Nah,
No.
nah. Um, now I should ask her sometime. Are you familiar? She's like, I could if I wanted.
Do you want that?
Do you want that for yourself, Winnie? She's like, I'm retired. I'm 13. Leave me alone. Episode 3, Healing Houses, Part 1. Got ghosts? Jenny sure does. So it's a two-part how-to episode about healing houses and personal energy. In Part 1, the hosts present all the tools they use to keep energetically clear, and Jenny creates her first internal psychic gauge. It's a squirrel! There is chicanery afoot at home, which leads to a Part 2 episode when Trai gets psychic on Jenny's bathroom spirit and all her magical environs. Jenny, we're back.
Hello.
Hello, and hello to all of our listeners. We have a very special episode for you. You get to see us in action. Well, not see us exactly. I mean, you can read us on the energetic realm if that's your jam. Otherwise, just feel free to listen along. Hey, we're going to do a house healing today. Why are we doing a house healing today, Jenny?
Because there's some suspicious energies in my house, and there's been a lot of chicanery going on lately. We don't think it's hostile, um, but definitely have been losing a lot of things, and there's also just been weird bouts of bad luck around the house. So,
I'm
yeah.
fascinated. Okay, so nothing negative. So things like, I don't know, finding your car like stolen and and hitting a
Yeah, nothing
tree.
life-changingly negative.
All right, so let's set the stage. Tell us about like where you live and when this started. Like, what were you noticing? What happened?
So um, I live in an apartment on the third floor. The city that I live in is it's a nice area without revealing my location. Good foliage, good nature nearby. I live with my roommate and best friend, so we're both pretty. Our energy hygienes are pretty pristine usually.
Okay, you're like the only
I don't.
person who gets to say that because I don't know anybody who has pristine energy hygiene.
I
First
would.
of all, explain what that is. It's what you
Well, I don't know. Like it. I just learned the term myself before we started this episode. So, what I understood it as is like like hygiene, like you would have with your smells and stuff. But it's about your energy and making sure your energy's good. And I feel like my anxiety is really sensitive to energy, so I pay a lot of attention to what kind of energy I output. Um, but yeah, I don't know if I have an exact time of when I started feeling, because I've always felt like there were things around me that like were unknown, and the unknown is scary. So some of them I'm sure are good, and I know there's been one entity that's been following me for a while that's good.
and you're just now mentioning this?
Well, we've talked about this in our past life reading so long ago.
Oh yeah.
I don't know who this entity is. I have ideas, but I don't know what their place is, so it's been kind of a touch and go in terms of talking about them.
Future
Um,
episode.
yes, but I do know that we put up protections around the house. So I have sachets, like tiny little bags, filled with protective herbs that
Because
we
you're an
put
herb
intention
witch.
to. Yes, that we put intention into, and then we put them at every entrance to the house, so the front door and all the windows, and we replenish those. And a couple weeks ago, the dream catcher, the really big dream catcher that's hanging outside my front door, the strap tip broke, and it fell off, and there was a protection sachet tied to it. And about a week ago or a few days ago, I was in my own daydream world doing dishes, I believe, and I just took off the protection sachet, just like fidgeting with it, just randomly. And then afterwards, I was like, I didn't have any thoughts about doing that. Why did I do that? It's like I just did it instinctively. Um, And that was around the time that you made a comment while we were doing a production meeting that it seemed like there might be a trickster energy in the house. Um,
Shenanigans.
which would track, because if it was a hostile energy, I would have picked up on it a lot
Mhm.
quicker. Because danger, danger, no, no bueno, get out of my house. But if it's just someone messing with us, like my ADHD does that anyway, and my old roommate dabbled in Fae stuff, which is also another episode.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm used to it, and so then I was like, oh, don't pay much attention to it. But now I'm like, so
Right on.
yeah, we'll see.
So, oh my gosh, so many things, so many things. So, I think a lot of people, they're sharing their space no matter what. Like, no matter what, you are sharing your space with entities from other dimensions. And there's like a whole list of things that it could be. But what we're trying to do in our homes is to create a space where our energy is not being taxed, where we're not being drained of energy, where we can feel safe and secure, that there's not anxiety, that we feel like we can close our eyes and take a nap and not get messed around with. I've known so many people who've had the kind of entities that have moved items around, and sure, it's trickster, but it's annoying. It's really annoying.
Yes.
So part of what I think we all have to learn is that we can own our space, whether it's just our personal space, whether it's our spiritual space, or it's our houses, our cars. We can keep it clear, and if something does come in, like, you absolutely can get rid of it, because it's your space. Like, you don't have to cohabitate with this stuff. That's something that I've heard from a lot of people, where they were just like, oh well, yeah, we got a ghost, oh well. And I'm thinking to myself, but like, do you have to? Do you have
I
to have a
feel like
ghost?
with a lot of people, it's the fear of like, I'm interacting with it, so maybe I'm opening other doors, or like
Ooh.
what else is going to happen? What other avenues are going to be open if I start communing with the spirit that's in my house? Because that was definitely my biggest fear.
That, what did you think was a potential thing to happen there?
That if it's a hostile energy, that me talking with it would like open the door to more chicanery or like more bad things,
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, now I'm acknowledging that you're in my space and now you're gonna start being mean and doing other things.
Oh, that's
Which I,
legit.
I, yeah, it definitely has validity, but like, I don't know. This is all new to me. The ghost stuff is.
My God. Um, so this was something we talked about in a previous episode, this idea of portals and how things come into our space. So when you were talking about the chicanery that was going on, I just automatically went into my psychic medium thing and I started reading it, which can be really annoying. I try not to just casually. I try really hard not to casually read people or things, because, like you said, you never know what you're gonna see. But every now and again, something will just pop in. Like, I was having dinner with a woman the other day, and she was telling me about where she lived, and I just looked at her and I was like, did it used to be, a different, like, this was an apartment building or something else? She's like, oh yeah, it used to be a school. And I go, is it like on a hill? She goes, yeah, it's on a hill. And I go, and are you moving soon? And she goes, yeah, I am. And I go, good, get out of there. And she's like, yeah, because it's really messed up there. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Like, faster the better.
Is it like accidental for you, or
It's
it just
accidental.
happens and you just happen?
Well, I
Okay,
shouldn't say accidental, because what's an accident anyway?
right.
What? So, everybody has these capacities to receive information, right? And then it's us learning how best to connect with them. Usually, when like a ghost or an entity, mostly a ghost, wants my attention. So if I'm doing a reading with somebody, whether it's a house healing or a past life reading or an energy clearing, all the time there are especially ancestors who want to step forward and say something. And I got to tell you, Jenny, most of the time I ignore it, because like, that's not what we're there for. Like I'm
Right.
here to do this other focus thing. So I kind of make them work for it. So I tell them to go away. And then if they don't, they ask again. I tell them to go away again. And then if they ask a third time, then I'm like, oh, it actually must be important. Okay, I will talk to you. But I try to be really careful because those of us who see ghosts, like we could be talking to ghosts all day long and like why? Why would we want to do
What's the point
what's the
behind
it's
it?
exhausting, so when I accidentally, we'll call it accidentally, read something or some place, I usually find that it is because there is a spirit guide with the person that I'm speaking to who is like, oh, good, we can get this, this information going. Like this person needs to be aware that something is happening. So when you were talking about your roommate, and that information immediately came in, that was not necessarily me. That was probably me being talked to by your spirit guides, which is fair game too, because light and love, as long as it's light
Right.
and love. Okay, so one of the things that we had talked about, actually, no, just tell me what you're noticing around the house, and I'm going to read it as you talk.
So I will say things being broken and
Rude,
things going missing.
rude.
Yeah. And like the things going missing, it's hard to gauge because I have unmedicated ADHD. So if something's in my hand and I'm not actively thinking about it, it's gone. Like I've lost it. I'm gonna set it down somewhere and forget. It's about the frequency where, like, I will say the most common thing has been the TV remote for the living room. We have two TV remotes and one that has actual full access over everything for the TV. And we will lose it within 30 minutes of finding it and then lose it for weeks. It
No.
actually got to the point, yes, it got to the point where my roommate cleaned the entire couch, removed all the cushions, and vacuumed. We put the cushions back. 2 days later, I find the remote just slid between the cushions, like in just the most obvious spot. And it's like, there's no way Sam wouldn't have found it, like in that spot. There's no way.
There's no way.
Um, so it's just like, okay, that's a little sus. And then uh, the Jersey trip, when I came back, I came home with this really awesome antique wooden goose. And I really love it. And the day on Saturday when we were getting ready for our podcast, in my hustle and hurry, I broke the goose's neck. Yeah, and I wood glued it. It's fine. Her name's Gertie. She's
Hi,
fine.
Gertie.
Um, but yeah, it's like, okay, I was clearly intending this to be witchy and protective, and it just immediately tried to snap it as soon as I brought it into the space. So I was like, okay, that's a little not great.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. We also just have a lot of plants that die around the house, but that also could just be how bad we are at taking care of plants. So that one's a little up for grabs.
So, so one of the things, if we're going to make this a learning episode, let's do it. I get this a lot with people where they say, I've been noticing XYZ, but you know what? It's probably just me. It's probably just the dog. It's probably just the wind. And I always say, you know what? Like, if it's on your mind, it's meant to be on your mind. That's your intuition, like paying attention to something. So let's just go ahead and say all of these things are happening because you've got some energy that, doesn't belong and is not welcome in your house. And I'm tracking him right now, and I know it's presenting as a male. And we'll
Yeah,
get
that's
further into
exciting.
it in a minute here. Um, so one of the other things that we're going to look at today and discuss today is the things that we can do to hold our space and to stop things. So you have the satchels in your apartment, and I have a whole litany of things that I do, which I'll talk about in a minute. Because I'm not always paying attention, my energy hygiene is not pristine. So I have to have little things that are just always kind of working for those times where I'm not, completely connected and paying attention. But and it's distracting me, like it sees me. So this is what I've always said: if I can see it, I can clear it. And here's kind of the problem. Well, it's not a problem; it's just a fact of life. If if I can see it, it can see me. And
Right.
that's a bummer for some people. They don't want to be seen. It scares them to know that they now are in some kind of a communication with something like that. And I can understand that that could be really, really terrifying. Um, woo. My dog just pulled out the electric cord. So, chicanery, 1 second. Let me go plug my computer
Was
back.
it your dog or the spirit?
I don't know. She's blind and deaf, so this one I might just write up on the dog. Give me 1 second. One of the things that came in when you and I were talking the other day was your roommate has a new job, and I immediately had a thought. So explain what the new job is.
My roommate did just start being an EMT. It is a development that's only been like less than a year underway because they're in class for like a semester and then they could just hit the ground running with it. They haven't seen anything heinous or crazy yet, outside of one interaction. But yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely new energies in the house with it. Potentially, I don't know.
Potentially, right? So that was the first thought that I had was, people who are first responders, and I mean, there's general practitioners, and they tend not to aggregate and pull energy. But what we usually find is that, obviously people in the military, people who are, police officers, medical personnel, especially the folks that work in emergency rooms, and your roommate who, the EMT factor of it, I immediately was like, okay, you guys are going to have to up your game because he is going to be around, not just, I mean, going to a cemetery is one kind of passed on energy, but,
Right.
unfortunately, going to a scene where somebody has just recently passed away, it's a really different scenario. Um, Sorry, my dog once again. Maybe she'll settle down in a minute, but I think she's really interested in our conversation, so she's all over
This is
my business.
fascinating though, because
She's
she's never been this active towards one of our discussions before,
she
ever.
doesn't care about production, but when I do healings with people, like, oh yeah, she's like right there. She's full in.
Wow.
And it's great to have she's not my spirit animal, but she's a very spiritual animal. So she comes and she lends her energy as well.
Would you consider her a familiar?
Nah,
No.
nah. Um, Now I should ask her sometime. Are you familiar? She's like, I could if I wanted.
Do you want that?
Do you want that for yourself, Winnie? She's like, I'm retired. I'm 13. Leave me alone. Anyway, I think that part of it is I'm so into the caretaking mode that it's odd to think about my dog being like taking on that much. And spirit animals, that'll be another conversation that we have.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, asparagus. So there's lots and lots of energy, so I'm having a little bit of a hard time like tracking things because I'm
Okay.
getting lots of information, but I also want to be having this conversation with you. But I want to lay the groundwork. So we talked about this idea of our houses are containers for us and our energy, and that we can push everything out. That if you have the feeling that, like lots of people talk about, like, oh, I felt like I was being watched. Oh, let me tell you, oh my God, I had decades of being watched. And having PTSD, I thought it was just hypervigilance, that I was just head on a swivel, man. And it wasn't. It was these entities that had spotted me and were not going to go away without some encouragement. And I think a lot of people just think that they have to live with it. So, if your house is making you, like, maybe it's just a part of it, is making you feel uncomfortable. We had talked about areas where there's stagnant energy. So these could be closets, attics, basements. Like, I don't do basements. Let me tell you, I do not do basements.
Interesting.
No, 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 no. Um, So every now and again, like going through and getting some sage, and for those who are visually watching, like I keep sage, well, I keep Palo Santo, and I burn that with as much frequency as possible because it clears, negative energy. But I keep shrines. I keep this right underneath my computer. This is I want to say celadon.
Selenite, yeah.
Selenite, there it is. And it does not have to be recharged because, again, I don't pay attention. But I keep it underneath my computer, and my computer's like 15 years old, and I'm pretty sure it's why it keeps running because the selenite is gathering in any negative, and that could be electrical energy as well. So
Hmm.
keeping something like this around, especially around your electronics, can be wonderful. You had talked about your entrances. I'll do like a cross over every entrance, including my closets. I'll keep
Okay.
I feng shui like crazy because, again, it's controlling the energy. It's honoring the fact that thousands of years people have been paying attention to energy flow. So, like, it's on the internet. Like, go study it. Is your bed in the right place? If not, change it. Simple as that. Maybe you'll sleep better. So I keep crosses in the house, and I don't identify as a Christian. I keep either obsidian or tourmaline over every entrance, including the windows, and it's just these little black rocks. Obsidian blocks only the bad stuff, and tourmaline blocks everything.
Interesting. Good to know.
And I think I have that right. I'm not a crystal person, but like if something calls to me, I will go scoop that up and make use of it. And then feng shui, I will hang crystals, just the faceted cheesy ones that you can get like at the Hallmark store. I'll hang it from a red ribbon because crystals hung from a red ribbon, according to feng shui, disrupts all the bad energy. So I keep one over my bed because I've spent a lifetime of getting messed with when I'm asleep. So, yeah,
Did it stop it?
um, not really. I think my issues go much deeper than that. Everybody's like, just put a big rock under your bed, it'll ground you. And I was like, yeah, that's not what's going
No,
on at
not
this
me,
party.
fam.
But I think the point is some of this it may very well be placebo. But it's a reminder, right? Because when your eyes rest on that sachet, you're reminded in that moment, I am in control of my space. Like, I could clear out the things that I don't want. And then maybe you might actually do stuff. So when was the last time that you burned sage or whatever it is that you do?
So, interestingly enough, both sage and Palo Santo are offensive to my nose.
Okay.
So I try, yeah, and I don't know if that means I'm just bad energy. My roommate did burn some Palo Santo last night, but it was just in the form of incense. So it was Palo Santo flavored scented incense. I do I do have specific incenses that I get from uh, a metaphysical store that I'll burn in rituals. So I would say the last time I had something actually full on burning in this house was probably the eclipse.
Ah ha ha. Ooh, and tell me about that. What was your intentions as you were burning stuff for the eclipse?
It might be a bit of asparagus, but I did an actually really intense ritual for the eclipse that took 2 hours.
What?
Um, yes, and I was completely drained for the next day and a half afterwards. Um, and there was quite a few aspects to that ritual that we can get into at another time. But yeah, I the burning stuff that I had one. I have an incense for each of my deities. The one I've already talked about is Hecate, and then the other one we can go over later. And then I have a protection burning incense, and these are like blends that are specifically made by the store that I went to, which is Urban Arts. And yeah, and then I would just burn it on a puck in some sand, and you'd light the puck and then burn the puck. And then I always add mint because mint is my jam. And then I added, I believe, some rose. that sounds correct. And then possibly some lavender. I'll throw whatever in there in the moment and then
Yeah.
forget about it later.
Yeah. But a big piece of that is like you're tapping into your your intuition. And if your intuition says
Yeah,
put some rose in, like you're not going to question that. You're just going to do
exactly.
it.
Like it's not going to do anything bad. Might as well.
Yeah, yeah. Fascinating. Okay. So I have two other things that I like to do. I discovered Florida water, Aqua de Florida. And this is the jam. So this is very good smelly stuff, although you may not respond to it with your particular nose palette. And I'm going to show you how to use this. You can, guys, you can get this at like Walgreens or Walmart or one of the whatever. Go to the aisle with it's a beauty aisle, and it's either where the African American hair and skincare is or where the Latino hair and skincare is. This is like $3, and it's got a really neat label. Anyway, so what I'm doing for the people who can't see this, I'm pouring just a little bit of the Florida water into my hands. You rub it together, and then clap your hands because that activates it. Yay. And then I like to smell it at the beginning because it'll have one smell when you start, and then you use it to cleanse your aura. And you go all the way down your body, just circle it around your head, and then rub your hands some more, and then I smell it again. Ooh, the smell is different. It's actually warmer. And I do another cleanse. Everything seems to work in threes. Is that a witchcraft thing that we picked up on, or?
I feel like it's just like a universal thing because it also shows up in storytelling a lot too. So
That's very true. And also comedy, like things stop being funny after the third time. So one of the things that I find is if I've hung out with somebody who's sad, who's just in a bad mood, or I went to the grocery store and I came back not feeling great, I'll be like, oh boy, I must have picked up somebody else's energy. And I'll actually ask, I keep a gauge in my head, and you can too, just like 0 to 100, how much of this energy is mine? And if it's like 40%, like I whip out the Florida water and I do that, and then I'm like, how much energy is mine? And it'll be like 90, and it'll be cool, I can roll with that. So this is another just quick fix. And it's astonishing how fast it'll change your mood. And then the other thing, I got really into sound medicine. So, like, really into it for a while there. Although I don't think I'm ever going to be the person that buys like $10,000 worth of crystal bowls. Like people have that. So I'm just going to go where they are and hang out and do sound medicine and stuff. But I have some chimes here, and again, 3 times. And we're going to use this in a second when we start the house healing. But you wait for it to ring all the way through so that your human ear can't hear the vibration anymore. And you do that 3 times, and it's just like the Palo Santo thing. So maybe if you can't find something to burn that smells good to you, that does that. Although I would imagine lavender would probably work as well. Maybe a chime will work. Yeah, so that's some of the fundamental things for the house. And this is a list that kind of goes infinite because,
Okay.
how many cultures have there been in the last 20,000 years or even longer? And they've all come up with their own ways to work with natural things in order to protect themselves you hear this phrase all the time, like lift your energy, raise your vibration. It's just this stuff, you guys. I mean, $3 at Walmart will change your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I
Well,
think,
and I use singing bowls a lot, and I don't know, that
oh,
helps with me too. Yeah.
oh, nice. Okay, except your guy, whoever is hanging out at your house, likes the singing bowls. So,
Oh, good
isn't
to
that
know.
interesting? Yeah. Huh. Okay.
I was going to ask about the gauge that you talked about without getting too much on a tangent. Just, is it one of those you ask yourself and then it's just the first like thought that comes into your head as a response is what you take as the response?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's
Cool.
kind of groovy, like in a meditation sometime, to go ahead and design your gauge because different gauges work for different people. Even orientation, like where the numbers are, and is it like something from the 18th century? Is it something, super nouveau? Is it like the Porsche speed gauge? You can have
The
what,
speedometer.
yeah, you can have whatever you want, whatever works with you. And this is one of those great tools that I've gone increasingly to where if I'm kind of on the fence about like a decision, then I'll be like, I'll ask. You have to ask a really specific question, which, by the way, is a whole other episode, like how to ask questions. Because let me tell you, the things that you can get when you don't ask correct, quote unquote, correctly, whatever that means, can be problematic. So, like, should I go to a movie today? It'll usually come in like 50-50, like, because that's kind of like, who cares? Like, whatever, do whatever. And then I'll be like, is there a reason I should not go to a movie today? And then if it goes like to 70 or 80, I'll be like, okay, I'm skipping the movie. It's just as simple.
Interesting.
And, yeah. So I've learned not to question the gauge because it's you just talking to yourself. That's all that is. It's just another tool for you to access your intuition. And again, there's billions. So we talked about this idea of paying attention, that if you don't feel quite yourself, then it's quite possibly that there is some energetic interference, and you don't have to be quite as attuned as Jenny is to know that you are being messed with. Although I do want to ask, when is the first time you ever noticed that you were being messed with at
So,
an energetic level?
do you mean in general or at this house?
In general.
It's it's really hard to say. I think it ties into emotional regulation for me, so a little bit asparagus, but like just the idea that being raised around neurotypicals, everything I was saying was constantly on trial. So I was really aware of what my thoughts were and how I was feeling. And my anxiety was hyper aware of the small little ticks on other people and how they were feeling. So I am just really in touch with how everybody who I know is feeling. And like, you can't hide it from me. If I know you well and you're in a bad mood, I'm going to know. Like, it's automatic. Um, and so because of that, I'm hyper aware to just clean that energy. But I will also say that's a double edged sword where I am very aware of people's energy. And because of that, I don't pay as much attention to the like spiritual energy that's in the space. Like, people's energy, I'm all with, but actual space energy is a struggle for me, for sure.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Okay. So this is a way just to sort of take what already is a natural gift of yours and to expand on it. The fact that you're, willing to call this what it is, which is, energetic interference, is pretty awesome. Do you find that you have a lot of friends that are, I don't know, willing to have these conversations with you?
There's not a single one of my close knit friends who does not believe in metaphysics and witchcraft. Like, and it wasn't intended that way. It's just I have all these people that I'm close with, and then I started getting into this, and they're just like, yeah, like latching onto it. They totally agree. Some of them want to practice with me. So yeah, not one of them doesn't believe it.
That's awesome. Isn't that interesting how that happens?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'll meet people all the time, and either one of two things is going on, or one of three things. Either one, most of my close friends have PTSD, and it's just because it's easier. Like, I don't have to explain myself to them. They don't need to explain themselves to me. Like, we just get each other. We are operating from a very specific kind of, operating system. The other is, people who are really super sensitive. But that combination, like the place where most of my friends are, is like a combination of both of them. So they have trauma, the kind of trauma that is exerting itself and making itself known on the daily. It can be really disruptive in the way, we spend our lives. But then also they're psychic. And sometimes I won't even know it until, like, sometimes, something will come up and they'll be right there and I'll be like, oh, look, I found another one. They were right beside me all this
Wow.
time. We just weren't talking about it yet. So isn't that exciting?
It's because of the frequencies we vibrate at, you know? It's just gonna attract the same frequencies whether we like it or not.
And that's a little bit scary with the PTSD thing because we have and this is a
Yeah, it
really
is.
bad saying, and I understand this is not an appropriate thing to say, but growing up, we would be like, oh my gosh, how did so and so end up with another really bad partner? And the saying in our household was, well, crazy knows crazy. And we didn't understand that it's what you're talking about. What are you comfortable with? What are you familiar with? So when you're at that low, let's just call it, yeah, the frequency, the vibration, like when you're operating from that really sad place or depressed place or angry place, half of you is going to be attracting more of the same sad, angry, whatever. But then that other piece of you is also, but this is what you were raised with. This is how
Yeah.
your parent behaves. So therefore, I'm going to be, trying to recreate exactly what it was that I did, which is kind of alarming and upsetting. And I found that when I got really into the spiritual stuff about 10 years ago is when I started seeing some changes in, finding more psychic people who weren't, I mean, we all suffer, but they weren't suffering as egregiously as perhaps my earlier friendships were in my 20s. So you get to skip that.
Well, and like I don't know. No, Jenny, we can't do it. A little bit,
A little
but
bit,
like I
a little
feel like
bit.
when you're starting to be ready to heal, that also tunes into your frequency, and so like, oh, you're on the healing part of this trauma, so you're going to attract other traumatized beings who are trying to heal as well, versus cycling through people who are not, because you're not.
Oh, I love
That's all
that.
we'll say on that. So
No,
yeah,
that's a whole episode. Yeah, that's
it is. That's why I
huge.
was like, we.
No. Hold back, hold back. But let's make a note of that because I think that's really important. Yes, yeah, that's yes. Okay, stopping, coming back. I'm glad you brought up this idea of being like when you're ready to heal. So one of the things that I've learned about all entities, no matter what their origin is most of them don't want to be here. Most of them got stuck here. Even the ones that did come in kind of voluntarily, it's like, this will be fun. Let's go mess with the humans. At some point, they're just like, oh my God, I'm so bored. I'm so bored. I'm so bored. So, what I've learned to do is at the beginning, when it was all just kind of anger and leave me alone, because y'all, I got attacked a lot. Like psychic attacks, like du jour. Like it was a constant thing, which is one of the things that drove me into spiritualism is I have to figure out how to stop getting targeted all the time. Such a hassle. One of these things was I would send them back. Initially, I learned just to send them back to their own dimension, which is great, right? Like
Interesting.
just you
Yeah.
don't belong here. This ain't you. And even people who have passed on, this isn't really where they're supposed to be anymore. Like, you got to move on. You got to move on. But the other thing that I learned is releasing folks and releasing entities and being like, so even the darkest stuff is really just, entities that have gotten really detached from God. And if you give them the opportunity to go back to source, like they take it. They almost always take it. Some of them don't because they're not done being rowdy. But it's not my choice. It's not my deal. So that's what we're going to do today with the house healing. Is we're going to give your third roommate, who is not paying rent and does not
A
belong here.
third roommate.
He's sure moved in. He's really made himself comfortable. We're going to give him an option to move on. And whether he goes back, and again, he's presenting as male, which is why I'm using that pronoun. He has the option to go back to his own dimension, but I'm also going to give him the option of like, go back to source. And there you go.
Well, and I'm curious because, as I've mentioned, I know there is an entity that's been with me, and I almost see it as a spirit guide. See, also him as a spirit guide. So, is it possible it's the same? Is it going to mess with that entity? Is it like how do we know when we're messing with the spirit guides versus just the spirits who don't belong? I guess is the question.
I know. Isn't that a hassle? So that's a it's an involved conversation, but what it kind of comes down to, there's two pieces, because there's always two pieces with me, I swear. Sometimes three, and then sometimes four, and then I really have to just stop. This is not a spirit guide because the energy is antagonistic. So one of the
Okay.
things that we learn is if the energy that you are working with, whether voluntarily, like if you call in an angel to work with, but like it tells you to like, I don't know, do something bananas, like throw out all of your clothes except for the black ones. Although I'm a witch, so I have lots of black clothes. Maybe that's not a great example. But if it tells you to do something that doesn't sit right with you, then you're going to be like, you're not an angel. You're not a spirit guide. The folks that we work with will only give you positive support.
Okay.
So that's
Okay.
one really crucial thing. And because my barometer, because again, PTSD, like I have no danger, whatever, man. Like I could walk into horrible situations and I'll recognize that there's something up, but I won't do anything about it because like guess what? Like I've lived my whole life like kind of being bombarded by antagonism and abuse. So it has messed up my ability to know whether or not somebody is actually a good guy or a bad guy, to use that phrase.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So I use the phrase only those of light and love. So when I'm asking for support, and we're going to ask for support today, I will be like only those of light and love, only those who have a positive or beneficial purpose with me. And then if I'm still not feeling really secure about it, then I'll be like, anything that that is not here in love and has a benefit purpose with me, has to leave. So you can say it until you feel it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for asking that. It's a really good question. So your spirit guide. So let's do the gauge thing. Oh, this is fun. This is not necessarily something we intended to do
I'm
today.
excited.
So close your eyes and think of a gauge, just 0 to 100 in any way it presents itself.
Okay.
And go ahead and ask it. Ask it a controlling question. So, and you don't have to say it out loud, but ask it. Or say, I live in X place. In your head, ask it that, and then see what the needle does.
Okay.
And what did it? I'm gonna guess. I'm not gonna guess. I'm psychic. It didn't give you 100%, right? What did it give you?
It did give me 100.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I still have that layer of doubt behind it because I doubt everything that comes out of my mind. So, but
Okay,
it
so
did.
that's why it gave you 100%. Because normally,
not
like,
doubt
guys,
it.
we're not all here. Like, we live in lots of places all over the universe. So usually people be like, why does it say, like, I'm only here 80%? Because 20% of you is off in the ether. All right, so think of another question that you feel like is a yes no question, like a really definitive 100% in your mind.
Okay. That was a bad question. Okay.
See, it's how you shape the question, right? Do you want to share the question? You don't have to.
I said to myself, I am a trans woman, as a yes or no question. The reality is I'm a gender fluid trans woman, so I got 80% on that answer, where it's like, yeah, but like, mostly. And I was
20%
like,
of
you're
you.
right, bad question.
But it
My
gave
gender's,
you
yeah.
the accurate answer. Right on. Okay. Let's do one more. Do something like I don't know, your mom's name or something. Something really super basic. And if you know her maiden name, if she took a married name, include that.
Okay.
And what was the response?
It was 90 to 100. It was a little unclear because my vision of the actual thing became a little blurred in that moment, which was interesting. But it was 90 to 100. It was along those areas.
Awesome. I always feel like anything above 80 is like, I mean, are we really going to get 100 out of anything? Apparently you do, because you know exactly where you live.
Well, I didn't say I'm in. I said this is for that
This
question.
is.
So, yeah.
Oh, so it covered like the physical body, it covered the spiritual body.
Yeah.
Aren't you clever? Nice. All right. Okay. So this is a great tool for testing. Okay, so let's test the spirit guide concept. So zero out the guide, put it back to zero in your head, and see if you can get a bead on the energy of this entity that's been hanging out with you. And first ask it, is it of light and love? Is its purpose with me of light and love?
Okay, I feel like I might actually have to say it out loud. Is this entity that we are talking about of light and love? I got a 40.
Okay, that's actually the trickster one. So go back to the energy of the one that's been hanging out. Like really zero in and
Oh,
be really
got it.
specific that that's the one.
Okay. Is that entity John of light and love? Yeah, that was really, really positive 90. Really quick too.
Okay.
Because mine's like a little dial, and that one just
Ooh.
really quickly. Okay.
Okay. So see, easy peasy, right? And then I think it's through like meditation. That's when you start saying, okay, am I meant to have a relationship with this entity? Is it an ancestor? And actually, these are gauge questions. Is it an ancestor? Is it a spirit guide? Is it an angel? Is it a fae? I wouldn't be surprised if it's a fae. But who knows, right? So I don't know. Go do that, and maybe on the next episode we could come back and have that questionnaire going on. Okay, so let's do this. Let's ask it. So I'm going to show you. So the folks living at home, the folks who are watching the video of this. This is what's called a dowser. So it's a crystal on a chain. You can use anything. You can use literally, like if you have a rosary, if you have a necklace, whatever. So I found this. I like the gem on the end is kind of a milky green. I forget what it's called because, again, not a crystal witch, but I just like it. And I learned how to basically do the same thing that you're talking about as a gauge. And a lot of the people come in doing just a very basic, like, yes is forward, backwards, and then I'm going to stop it, and then no is side to side. So you have a gauge, so you don't need a dowser, but dowsing is fun. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you douse?
I've doused before. There's only one instrument that I've ever had that worked for me, and it was a copper one because I'm very, very, very connected with copper. And yes, but it was such a gray area answer. Where it would always give me maybes or yes, maybe, no, maybe, and I
Which
was
looks
like,
like
"This isn't
kind
what
of
I
swinging
want."
around,
Well,
like
it
it's all over the
was
place.
because I let it tell me what because the person who got it for me said you need to ask it questions you know the answer to so that you can
Right.
gauge what's yes and what's no. And my yes was like a diagonal left, my no was a straight down, and then side to side was I don't know. And it would just, and then sometimes it would create a new one, and I'm just like, this is like, it
Right.
would give me the yes and no sometimes, but sometimes it would not.
Okay. And that happens with a lot of folks, and it's part of it is practice, quite frankly. In fact, usually
Yeah.
this is what either it doesn't move at all, or you're just like, my name is Trai, my name is Trai, why aren't you moving? And like it's not budging, and then you're like, to heck with all of this. It's just practice and giving space to it. So I love to use a dowsing implement when I do house healings. Because when I do house healings, it's not me doing it. I'm calling in lots of support. I use it for like how long is it going to take to clear this, for example. And usually I'm now at the point where I already know the answer before I ask the question, a really good specific question to the dowser. I usually already know the answer, and then what I get back is usually what I was thinking, right? Every
Okay.
now and again, it's something different, and I'll be like, "Oh, what? Like, we must investigate further." Okay, so where do we want to start? So here's where I want to start. This is not going to take a long time because I'm not going to do a full investigation of everything. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up like energetic spaces where that we're safe in. And then I'm probably just going to keep my eyes closed because that's how I read better. I can concentrate better with my eyes closed. And then we will go and and I've already talked to him, and he's ready to go, but he's interested in what we're doing. Like, he's not going to give us any hassle. So that's
Okay, that's exciting.
he knows that this was just passing through. He was just having some fun, no harm, no foul. And that's another thing. Like, when you find even like the darkest stuff, they'll often be like, it was business, like it wasn't personal. And you'd be like, but like, you really hurt me. And they'll be like, well, we had a contract. I filled the contract. We broke the contract. Moving on now. And then you're like,
Wow.
but I can't hold a grudge against somebody who just like that I signed a contract with in another life. Another conversation. So, all right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ring the bell. You ready? I'm going to hold it away
Yes.
from the microphone because I want to blow anybody's ears out. There we go. That's what we wanted. Those bells mean it's time to get to work. Join us for part 2 of Healing Houses and listen to an energy clearing in action.